What was the weirdest slash oddest slash most shocking thing you found when clearing out the things of someone who passed on? When my grandma died, my mom and aunt asked me to be the one to go through her closets. I found a lot of interesting stuff, but the most shocking was her personal diary, dating back more than 40 years. My granddad cheated on her very openly, which I already knew, but she never talked about it. Reading her own perspective on the story was a wild ride. I didn't keep the diary. My mom didn't want it either, so I just gave it to my aunt. I don't know if she kept it. Edit. I guess now I have to tell the full story. I wasn't expecting this to get so much attention. So the area where I live is an urban place now, but in the 60s and 70s when this story took place, it was fairly rural. And this story goes the way rural stories tend to go. It's also worth noting that the story takes place in South America, so culture is a bit different. My grandparents didn't get too much of a chance to know each other before marriage. He was a friend of a family member, and he was introduced to her, and they were married a few months later. They had 5 children, but as the years passed, he just grew discontent. I don't remember the words she used specifically, but the main point is that he was looking for more, if you know what I mean. He started cheating on her. According to her diary, she knew, but she decided not to do anything drastic out of fear of not being able to support her family by herself. 5 children are a lot of mouths to feed. But it all came to a head when she heard that her husband had an out-of-marriage son. At this point, she kicked him out of the house. The diary doesn't describe it that way, but it's essentially what happened. The most interesting part, though, is what happens next. The mother of my granddad's other children was, to put it lightly, a jerk. The diary doesn't go into detail, but my grandma heard that the kids were neglected and abused, so she asked her husband to bring her the children. So my grandma took care of her husband's extramarital children, a boy and a girl aged 5 and 4 respectively. So now she has 7 children in her house that she was taking care of. The diary doesn't directly say what happens next, but inquiring from my oldest aunt who remembers the ordeal, after several years my granddad's mistress came to the house and demanded to take the children away. The most interesting part of reading the diary was seeing the way she described her own feelings. The first few chapters were heartbreaking to read, but she at least wrote it in a hopeful tone. The last page of the diary was a confession, where she said that she forgave her husband and his mistress for everything they'd done to her. While I was reading it, I could feel her heartbreak. My grandparents were never legally divorced, but they lived separately for the rest of their lives. He built a house in another rural area. That area is still rural today, and the house still stands, where he lived for a few decades, before moving in with one of my aunts. He died in 17, and my grandma died in 18. During my grandma's funeral, so before I discovered the diary, the oldest son of my granddad's mistress said that he considers my grandma to be his real mother. She cared for him and his sister when nobody else did, and he said that it's thanks to her that he's still there. He and his sister are part of the family as far as we're concerned. As for their mother, I have no idea what happened to her. My grandmother was the sweetest person I've ever known, and it honestly amazes me that she went through so much and managed to stay hopeful and positive. This is another thing that I feel like the person may not want you to read, or maybe she does, I don't know. Because in some way, it's something that you would never want to tell someone while you're alive, like these are feelings that are very personal. But after you're dead, maybe you do want someone to know how you felt. To know that even if it's after death, there is someone who will understand what you were thinking and feeling at that time, when all you could do at that time was just bottle it up inside and write about it. This must have been incredibly hard, and I can't believe how strong of a woman she must have been to raise 7 children, 2 of whom were not her own. That is a huge W for Grandma.